Monsters of an unfathomable scale dwell deep, many fathoms beneath the sea of Innistrad. These are the creatures of nightmares. They are krakens. They are leviathans. They are serpents and other benthic beasts, horrors who were long ago figures of veneration on the plane. Well, humans have long since turned to the worship of angels and demons, and the mightiest vampires of Innistrad now vie with one another for the pretension of calling themselves the Lord of Innistrad. Their fellow vampire, Runo Stromkirk, worships the ancient deities of the plane that the other peoples have long forgotten. And chief among them is Krothuss, Lord of the Deep. Runo Stromkirk is a 1/4 vampire cleric with flying for 1 generic, a blue, and a black that reads, when Runo Stromkirk enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If a creature card with mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, transform Runo Stromkirk. When transformed, Runo Stromkirk becomes Krothuss, Lord of the Deep. Krothuss reads, whenever Krothuss, Lord of the Deep attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a kraken, leviathan, octopus, or serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead. Our goal here is to transform Runo into his beloved deity as quickly as possible, and then attack with an army of sea monsters, making short work of our opponents in the process. Krakens, leviathans, serpents, and octopuses, octopi? Octopods? Octo-whatever, tend to be the largest creatures, so when Krothuss makes copies of them, they'll pack an enormous punch. To accomplish this goal, we'll need some slimy things that crawl with legs upon the slimy sea, or swim within the sea. Probably swim. Octopi have been known to crawl. The numerous sea monsters of Magic the Gathering take many forms, but as a rule they are usually mana-intensive with the upside of being enormous and difficult to defend against. Kraken of the Straits is a 6/6 Kraken that costs 5 and 2 blue, and can't be blocked by creatures with power less than the number of islands we control. Tidal Kraken costs 5 generic and 3 blue, and is simply unblockable. While Wormhole Serpent is a 3/5 for 4 and a blue, that grants unblockable to any creature for another 3 generic and a blue. Thassa, God of the Sea, may not be a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, but she can certainly make them unblockable for the low cost of 1 generic and a blue. And Serpent of Yawning Depths makes it so that only other Krakens, Leviathans, octopuses, and serpents can block our sea monsters. A rather unlikely prospect. Finally, Deep Channel Mentor, which, like Thassa, is not a sea monster, makes our blue creatures, which is all of them, unblockable. Other sea monsters tap down our opponent's creatures, clearing our path to strike. When Icebreaker Kraken enters the battlefield, target opponent's artifacts and creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. When we cast Elder Deep Fiend, we're able to tap down up to 4 target permanents. Shipbreaker Kraken taps down 4 target creatures when it becomes monstrous, making it easy for it to swing on in for a solid 6 damage, or 18 with Krothuss on our side. Speaking of Krothuss, the copies of our sea monsters it makes are tokens, which both reduce the cost of Junk Winder and trigger its ability to tap down our opponent's would-be blockers. Smooth sailing ahead, I'd say. When tapping down our opponent's creatures just isn't enough, we can always remove them. Hullbreaker Horror is a 7/8 Kraken Horror for 5 and 2 blue with flash that reads, this spell can't be countered. Whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Wow, that's a doozy. Slinvoda, the Rising Deep, is an 8/8 legendary Leviathan for 6 and 2 blue that returns all creatures to their owner's hands, except merfolk, nice, and our sea monsters when kicked. Plain old damage isn't our only option either. Fleet Swallower forces an opponent to mill half their deck rounded up every time it attacks, while Nemesis of Reason may only cause your opponent to mill 10 cards when it attacks. And that can add up quickly as well, depriving our opponents of answers and slowly whittling away their chance of victory. Note that the mill trigger is on the attack, and making extra tokens of these creatures will not result in extra mill the first time they strike, but it will on all subsequent times those tokens attack. Pretty cool that the tokens don't go away at end of turn. We just get to keep them. That's called value. Rexiel or Reziel or whatever eel, the Risen Deep, allows us to cast instants and sorceries for free from the graveyards of opponents it deals combat damage to, pairing well with these two mill monsters. Completing our team of benthic beasts are Wonder and Archetype of Imagination, both of which will grant our creatures flying, making us masters of both sea and sky. Take that, Tolarian! With Krothuss tripling up our sea creatures, our opponents will soon be fish food. Support. In order to transform Runo Stromkirk, we need to have a creature with mana value of 6 or higher on top of our library. Many of our creatures fit the bill, but getting them there in the first place is key. Luckily, Runo lets us put one from our graveyard on top of our deck when he enters the battlefield, and the triple threat of Entomb, Unmarked Grave, and Buried Alive will help us make sure they get there. In case that strategy doesn't work out, we run Ponder, Brainstorm, and Sensei's Divining Top in order to manipulate the top card of our library. Mana values of 6 and higher are pretty steep, but Quest for Ula's Temple and Quicksilver Amulet allow us to bypass all that. Quest for Ula's Temple is a favorite of mine that is a 1 blue mana enchantment that reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may reveal it and put a quest counter on Quest for Ula's Temple. At the beginning of each end step, if there are 3 or more quest counters on Quest for Ula's Temple, you may put a Kraken, a Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Well, we have 21 creatures in the deck, so the chances of seeing at least 3 are pretty reasonable, and those odds definitely increase with Runo Stromkirk around. Meanwhile, Quicksilver Amulet just requires us to pay 4 generic mana and tap it to put a creature from our hand onto the battlefield. How efficient! Even with those tricks, we run a total of 12 mana rocks just to be safe. Since the deck is so combat focused, let's throw in a Sword of the Animist and a Sword of Hearth and Home to help round it out, giving us lands whenever our critters attack or deal damage, respectively. Add a Wayfarer's Bauble for a little more land ramp, and we're good to go. Speaking of the combat step, much of our card draw is built around it. Sea Dasher Octopus, Bident of Thassa, and Reconnaissance Mission draw us cards when we deal combat damage, while Military Intelligence lets us draw a card whenever we attack with 2 or more creatures. Because our creatures are large, Rush of Knowledge seems like a good fit, drawing us cards based on our largest creature's power, while Flow of Ideas lets us take advantage of all the snow-covered islands we're playing, drawing a card for each of them. Both because of our focus on mana acceleration due to the hefty casting cost of our creatures, and because several of our creatures have pseudo-removal on them, our removal suite is a little light. Even so, we have ways to deal with nearly every permanent type. Pongify is a great single mana way to deal with troublesome creatures. Sure, they get an ape, but apes aren't known for being robust swimmers. Or maybe they are, it's just a joke, don't fact check that. Raven Form is a sorcery that costs 2 generic and a blue and allows us to exile an artifact or a creature, while Feed the Swarm costs 1 and a black to destroy a creature or enchantment. When it comes to mass removal, we run the Sea Monster deck All-Star Whelming Wave, which just returns all creatures that aren't Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents to their owner's hands. Innocent Serpents to their non-blue creatures, something we simply do not have. And of course, since we're in blue, we run Counterspell, a classic of the genre and bane to many. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, allows us to generate mana for all those blue pips in our creature's mana costs, while Mortuary Mire and Halimar Depths helps us to manipulate the top of our library, making sure our massive creature is there so Runo can transform into Krothuss. Finally, we play the good old Dark Depths and Thespian Stage combo. For those unfamiliar with this combo, let's explain. Dark Depths enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters on it and costs 3 generic to remove 1. When all those counters are removed, you sacrifice it and put a Marit Lage token onto the battlefield. Marit Lage is a 2020 indestructible flying legendary avatar. Thespian Stage is a land that taps either for colorless mana, or you may pay 2 generic and tap it to make a copy of of any other land on the battlefield. We use this ability to copy Dark Depths, and because Thespian Stage didn't enter the battlefield, as Dark Depths did, it will have no ice counters, meaning you immediately sacrifice it to create Marit Lage. Well, this combo is a classic in Commander and also Legacy, and run in a wide variety of decks simply as a quick way to help end the game. At least here it's on flavor, because Marit Lage is, well, I don't think she's a sea monster. Some people think she's an Eldrazi. Whatever she is, she's got tentacles or something. It's close enough, we'll take it, it's on theme, it's flavor. Pretty slick, huh? You know what I love most about Runo Stromkirk and Krothuss Lord of the Deep? It's that it gives us an opportunity to have a vampire commander that isn't just doing vampire tribal. Yes, I am talking about you, Edgar Markov. Well, the first, not so much I guess the second. But now I want to hear from you. What deck would you like to see a tech on next? Decklist for this is posted in the description, and you can help me out greatly just by remembering to subscribe or sharing with a friend. I hope very much that Runo Stromkirk helps you make a splash at your next Commander night.